The top stories tonight in Y News. Non-essential outbound travel from the Philippines resumes today, but only a small number of Filipinos are traveling abroad, according to the Bureau of Immigration.
The number of overseas Filipino workers stranded in various quarantine facilities in Metro Manila further rose today. Meanwhile, Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III is positive the government will be able to settle the issue between PhilHealth and Red Cross within the week.
The Department of Agriculture suspects that pork supply in the country is being manipulated. Pepito intensifies into a severe tropical storm, but it is forecast to exit the Philippine area of responsibility tomorrow morning or afternoon.
After 7 months of not accepting tourists from other countries, Thailand finally opens its border to 39 tourists from Shanghai, China.
And Australia's Great Barrier Reef faces extinction as the government pushes its gas industry. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, October 21, 2020. I am Jorlene Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide to the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, the government has approved outbound travel for non-essential trips. That means going outside the country, even for leisure purposes, is now permitted. But authorities say that only a small number of Filipinos are traveling abroad. Here's Joan Nano to tell us why, live. Yes, Joan?
Herling, after 7 months of lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the government finally approves non-essential outbound international travel. Filipinos are now allowed to travel abroad even if it's just for leisure purposes, provided they can comply with and submit all the requirements. These include a round-trip ticket, travel and health insurance for tourist visa holders, and a negative COVID-19 test result depending on the required type of testing of the destination country. Also, passengers are required to fill out a declaration form stating that he or she understands the risk of traveling abroad, including health risks and the possibility of being put into a lockdown or delays in return flights. However, a lot of Filipinos are still hesitant to travel abroad due to fears of catching COVID-19.
Nung pinamonitor po natin, mababa pa rin po yung mga number ng biyahero. Even naman po nung for essential travel, kakaunti rin po, handful lang po yung mga umaalis na bansa. I believe naman din because people know the risks ng kanilang pagbiyahe sa ibang bansa.
Apart from health risks, some Filipinos opt not to travel due to expensive requirements such as swab testing. That's according to Philippine Travel Agencies Association or PTTA.
The biggest hindrance right now and the biggest concern of most travelers that I personally speak to, is yung having to go through a test. Yung test pa lang, especially if it's a swabbing test, there are a lot of people who tries to back out on that.
As of now, Herline, the airline companies are still preparing to mount their outbound flights to accommodate passengers of non-essential travels. The Department of Foreign Affairs advises Filipinos who will travel abroad to know the existing travel restrictions implemented in their destination country to avoid being stranded.
There are many destinations around the world that are still in their own travel restrictions and quarantine protocols. Just to give an example, if you go, for example, to Singapore, you are required to undergo a 14-day quarantine. Now, if you were just going for a visit as a tourist,
Arlene?
So, Joanne, what is the biggest challenge here now that the government allows non-essential travel abroad?
Yes, Herlene, according to the Bureau of Immigration, one of the biggest challenge here is building passengers' confidence to travel, since a lot of countries are still struggling with COVID-19 transmission and border restrictions are still in place. It is also difficult to comply with the travel requirements on the part of the passengers. Herlene?
Thank you so much, Joanne Nano, for those updates.
Meanwhile, the Department of Budget and Management has released 4.413 billion pesos worth of funds under the Bayanihan 2. Meanwhile, some senators have urged the DBM to fast-track the release of funds under the Bayanihan 2. Rosalie Cos tells us why.
The Department of Budget and Management assures the public that it provides sufficient attention to the release of funds under the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act or Republic Act No. 11492, known as Bayanihan 2. According to the DBM, out of the 140 billion pesos worth of COVID-19 related interventions, 4.413 billion pesos has already been released to the Department of the Interior and Local Government, Office of Civil Defense, Bureau of the Treasury for Local Government Units, and the Department of Foreign Affairs. The funds allotted are for hiring and training of contact tracers, construction and maintenance of isolation facilities, including billing of hotels, food and transportation, COVID-19 Local Government Support Fund, and assistance to Nationals Fund. Meanwhile, the recommendations to release funds to other departments have also been forwarded to the Office of the President, amounting to 46.207 billion pesos. The approval of the Office of the President is necessary because the funding source will be the balance of pooled savings under the law, and the President was granted authority by Congress to use the savings. Some senators have urged the DBM to fast-track the release of funds under Bayanihan 2 because the law is effective until December 19, 2020 only. However, Malacan believes the expiration of the law does not include the expenditure of the allotted budget.
Kinakailangan lang naman po magastos yan. Pero I don't think yung paggastos po is subject to the expiration of the law. Kasi yan po ay na-appropriate na, no? And it's just about to be released. So, wala naman pong problema yan.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The number of overseas Filipino workers stranded in various quarantine hotels in Metro Manila further rose today. Meanwhile, Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III is positive the government will be able to settle the issue between PhilHealth and Red Cross within the week. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
Malacan believes that the President's personal assurance that PhilHealth will settle the debt it owes to Red Cross is enough for the humanitarian organization to resume its services. The palace says that the Philippine Red Cross need not doubt the President's words. As days pass by, the number of returning overseas Filipino workers increased, and from around 4,000 OFWs yesterday, there are 2,000 more overseas Filipino workers stranded in quarantine hotels in Metro Manila who await the results of their swab tests for coronavirus. According to Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III, there are 126 quarantine hotels accommodating OFWs who have returned to the Philippines after their jobs were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. From a turnaround time of 3 days before, now, test results are issued after 5 days according to the Philippine Coast Guard. This was after the Philippine Red Cross stopped its COVID-19 testing services for the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation due to arrears. The PCG, who assists returning OFWs upon arrival at the airport, has returned to manual gathering of the OFWs' personal details. The PRC's electronic or online system can no longer be used now for the recording purposes. But Secretary Bello says they are positive this problem will be resolved within the week.
Even the president of PhilHealth himself said that they will pay. They just want some minor conditionalities to be complied with before they fully pay the accountability of PhilHealth to Red Cross.
Secretary Bello adds that in case PhilHealth cannot settle its debt owed to the PRC, DOLE is looking at an alternative action on the matter.
In the event na hindi makabayad, pwede kami mag-advance pero i-reimburse naman kami.
Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippine National Police bans partying among its units this holiday season. Instead, the police will donate to the PNP's food bank. Also, the PNP chief wants stricter police visibility in places of convergence this holiday season. Leah Ilagan reports why.
The Philippine National Police confirms there will be no parties among its units this coming holiday season. PNP Chief Police General Camilo Cascolan says they will just donate the money to the COVID-19 fund.
On no Christmas party for the Philippine National Police. They will understand that. Instead of using the funds for a Christmas party, we will be giving it out for COVID patients or maybe for the COVID fund.
The PNP will also give some amount to their food bank.
If ever in December we still are in a GCQ or MGCQ, at least we have a food bank that will go around and be able to distribute food that is coming from the Philippine National Police and from the sponsors.
Interior Secretary Eduardo Año has earlier said in an interview that holding a party is still prohibited in areas under general community quarantine. Based on the IATF guidelines, mass gatherings are still not allowed in GCQ areas. Cascolan also reminds ground commanders to implement stricter police visibility in places of convergence this holiday season.
We have to rationalize the deployment of our forces. When we say proper deployment of forces and resources, kailangan natin yung mga lugar talaga na kailangan ang mga pulis. Hindi lang yung basta-basta nilagay mo lang ang pulis dyan. Dapat alam din ng pulis kung anong ginagawa niya, ano rin ang hinahanap niya. Well, you know what Christmas really means. There might be an upsurge of criminality or even maybe terrorism. So that's why we need to be prepared for all of these things.
Authorities are monitoring public places such as shopping malls, bus terminals, seaports, airports, places of worship, vital installations, and other places of convergence. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Health, or DOH, believes that a larger part of the country's population must be vaccinated against COVID-19. Our health correspondent Aiko Miguel details why.
The government will prioritize to immunize 20% of the country's population against COVID-19 based on President Duterte's mandate. Congress is sourcing funds to complete the 12.1 billion pesos fund to procure COVID-19 vaccines. According to the Health Department, it is preferable to immunize a large portion of the population in order to have herd immunity in communities with a high prevalence of COVID-19 cases.
But it doesn't stop there, no? Because we would need about 60 to 70% of the population immunized so that we can have herd immunity. So when we talk about 12.5 billion, that is just covering about 20% of our population. So we still need budget for about 40% of the population para lang maka-reach natin yung 60% for herd immunity.
Congress has committed to look for ways to complete the budget for vaccine procurement. Congressman Eric Pineda, chair of the Committee on Labor and Employment, supports the DOH on the immunization of more than 60% of Filipinos.
The most important is the herd immunity. And if we can provide vaccine for more of our countrymen, mababawasan na yung tao na pwedeng mahawaan nitong COVID. And by that time, we will be able to eradicate it. Not say 100%, but maybe talagang we will be able to limit it, and later on, talagang mawawala na.
Meanwhile, based on the study of UP Octa Research, there were areas in the country with high COVID-19 cases count from October 11 to 17, to include provinces and cities that record high single-day cases. Those are the cities of Pasig, Makati, Pasay, Mandaluyong, and Marikina in Metro Manila, to name a few. According to the DOH, although the rate of transmission in the country has become lower, there are still areas that should be monitored and where anti-COVID measures must be intensified.
Magandang indikasyon yan, Greg, and we are really hopeful na sana masustain na pa natin ng mas matagal. Pero ang kailangan pa rin natin tignan, we do not want to be complacent at this point kasi nakikita pa rin natin that there are some areas in the country, pagkamat meron na tayong less than one transmission, ay nakikitaan pa rin natin ang ibang mga bahagi sa ating bansa ay meron pong mga clusters, meron pong mga karagdagang mga kaso, may mga pagtaas ng kaso.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the country's Department of Health says that 1,509 new cases were reported today, raising the total confirmed cases of coronavirus infection in the Philippines to 362,243. That's the 20th highest cases globally, just below Indonesia's more than 373,000 total confirmed cases. Rizal and Cavite provinces logged the most additional cases, both with more than 80. The total active cases increased to almost 44,000. Of that number, 83.0% are in mild condition, while 11.6% are asymptomatic. We have lost 60 more patients. But through our fervent prayers, medical interventions, and sacrifices of our medical frontliners, 911 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. That brings the total recoveries nationwide to 311,506. That's the 14th highest number of recoveries among nations hit by the pandemic. Thanks be to God.
Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of over 40.8 million confirmed cases in 189 countries, regions, and sovereignties. That's after more than 200,000 new confirmed cases were recorded across various countries in the last 24 hours. The fast-spreading disease has claimed more than 1.1 million lives, with over 3,000 new death cases around the globe since yesterday, while close to 28 million patients across the globe have recovered from the new coronavirus infection. Thanks be to God.
The government will distribute almost 10 billion pesos worth of assistance to farmers and fisherfolk. It will be shared among nearly 2 million beneficiaries. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
After the approval of Senate Resolution Number 12, the Department of Agriculture is now permitted to distribute the excess in tariffs collected from importing rice under the Rice Tarification Law or RTL. According to Agriculture Secretary William Dar, the excess tariff from the 10 billion peso initial target from the RTL is now amounting to almost 5 billion pesos recorded from 2019 up to present. Farmers stealing not more than a hectare of land and included in the registry system for basic sectors in agriculture will receive 5,000 pesos.
Na-approve na sa Senado yung excess tariff na 2019 at saka 2020 ay mga almost 5 billion na yon, at yun ay maibibigay sa almost 1 million na rice farmers.
Non-rice farmers, fisher folks, and indigenous people will also receive assistance worth 5,000 pesos from the allocated 4.5 billion pesos in Bayanihan 2. The assistance is composed of 3,000 peso cash, rice worth 1,000 pesos, and another 1,000 pesos for chicken and egg. The Agriculture Department will implement an e-voucher system for distribution. The official hopes that this program will help mitigate the effects of low palay price on the livelihood of farmers as well as the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
A group of young leaders places litter booms in Manila City's Estero de la Reina. Meanwhile, authorities appeal for cooperation and discipline among residents along the creeks of Manila City. Asher Cadapan Jr. tells us why.
Another environmental project was accomplished by the Junior Chamber International or JCI Manila as the young leaders conduct their cleanup week in the city of Manila. Today, the group formally turned over the litter boom to help collect trash in Estero de la Reina in Tondo.
There's lots of informal settlers in our esteros, and then alam natin yung problema is about their littering, but at the same time, while we're educating them not to litter, we also made this supplemental system to also para hindi naman madumihan ang Manila Bay at least.
JCI Manila hopes to empower Manila residents with the awareness of caring for the environment and the impact of their own little ways on the entire community.
Isa may nahuhuli kami dito mismo sa tulay, ihahagis. Ihahagis na lang. Sinisita namin. Sisitayin namin, magmumura pa sa amin eh. Kaya ginagawa namin, kung sino maaabot namin, talagang dinadala namin sa barangay.
Authorities continue to call for discipline among residents along the creek in support of the project, which benefits the community and the environment.
Nakikisa po ako sa mga barangay chairman na pagtulong-tulungan namin linisin ang ilog sa Estero de la Reina upang hindi na dumami po.
Tama na po yung turuan kung sino po yung kanino pa nang galing basura. Pero lahat po galing po sa atin lang, makabahayan po yan.
Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The local government of Manila opened the city's 13th coronavirus quarantine facility. Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Domagoso says they are still looking for additional facilities. Dante Amento tells us why.
Manila City Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso led the opening of a new COVID-19 quarantine facility in San Andres Sports Complex this morning. The 54-bed facility offers internet connectivity and is fully air-conditioned. The city government joined efforts with the Department of Public Works and Highways to build the structure. Mayor Isko said they are still looking for additional facilities.
This is our preparation in our small little way to continue to strengthen our load capacity, no? Na kung sakali wag naman sana loobin ng Diyos mangyari sa atin yung nangyari sa most portion of Europe na nagkaroon ng second wave.
Manila City now has 13 isolation facilities with a total of 525 beds. It also has walk-in testing centers and 2 swab testing facilities.
Sa awa ng Diyos, we only have about 68% occupancy rate with our quarantine facility and 33% capacity occupancy rate sa amin ng mga COVID-19 bedroom in our 6 hospital.
As of today, the nation's capital has almost 600 active cases out of the more than 18,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases. Dante Amento, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Agriculture suspects that the pork supply in the country is being manipulated. Ray Pelayo tells us why.
The prices of pork in some Metro Manila markets are now higher than the prices of beef, such as those in Mega Q-Mart and Muñoz in Quezon City. According to Agriculture Secretary William Dar, they are suspecting manipulation of pork supply. The official notes that the supply of frozen pork now in Metro Manila is even higher by 55% compared with its price last year. He said he will call a meeting with suppliers to release what they have on stock.
Mayroon tayong tinitingnan na minamanipula nila yung paglabas ng frozen pork kasi mayroon naman nandyan na sa mga cold storages natin.
Secretary Dar said that African swine fever has really affected the pork supply, but they are now coordinating on how the suppliers from Visayas and Mindanao will be delivered to Metro Manila. There are 25 provinces now affected by ASF. The Agri Department is calling for public cooperation to prevent the further spread of the disease. The Agriculture Chief said that the price of chicken is now recovering.
Yung kakulangan po natin sa pork ay pwede naman punuan galing po sa chicken.
Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Now, here's a glimpse of what's the weather like in parts of the country. Pepito intensified into a severe tropical storm at 2 p.m. today. It is forecast to move generally west-northwestward over the West Philippine Sea today. That's before it slows down and turns northwestward tomorrow. It is forecast to exit the Philippine area of responsibility tomorrow morning or afternoon. On the forecast track, Pepito will accelerate and turn westward beginning Friday towards the central portion of Vietnam. According to Pag-asa, today until tomorrow morning, light to moderate with at times heavy rains will be experienced over western Visayas, Zamboanga Peninsula, Batanes, Babuyan Islands, Zambales, Bataan, Occidental Mindoro, and Palawan. Beware because flooding, including flash floods and rain-induced landslides, may occur during heavy or prolonged rainfall, especially in areas that are highly or very highly susceptible to these hazards. No tropical cyclone wind signal is currently in effect, but high to gale force winds will be experienced over northern Luzon, especially in coastal and mountainous areas due to northeasterly surface wind flow. Also, Pag-asa is monitoring another weather disturbance. At 4 p.m. today, the tropical depression outside the Philippine area of responsibility was estimated at 1,865 kilometers east-northeast of extreme northern Luzon. This disturbance remains unlikely to enter the Philippine area of responsibility.
Malacan says it is possible that President Rodrigo Duterte will create an independent task force to investigate the alleged corruption within the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, after President Duterte's criticism last week that no infrastructure projects begin without facilitation fees. Public Works and Highways Secretary Mark Villar created a task force to probe the alleged anomalies in the agency. However, the task force is being questioned since it is composed of DPWH officials. Malacan appeals to the public to give the DPWH a chance to fight irregularities within the department. But presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said it is not impossible for President Duterte to create an independent task force to investigate the alleged corruption in the state's engineering and construction arm.
Some senators are alarmed over the huge number of foreign retirees in the country. During the Senate Finance Subcommittee hearing on the proposed 2021 budget of the Department of Tourism, senators quizzed the Philippine Retirement Authority, or PRA, on the influx of foreign retirees in the country as young as 35 years old. Based on PRA's data, over 27,000, or at least 40% of all foreign retirees in the country, are Chinese nationals, followed by Koreans with more than 14,000. PRA General Manager Bienvenido Chi said they allow foreign retirees who are 35 years old and up with at least $50,000 or 2.5 million pesos cash on hand. The retirees invest in buying condominiums to reside in the country.
The reason for the 35 years of age is that in Korea, the military would retire at the age of 35. And these are retirees who would avail of this program.
But some senators are worried that some of those foreigners might be working in the country illegally.
I don't know if you have the budget to monitor na hindi nagtatrabaho sa POGO itong mga Chinese retirees. Kasi kung ang demographics nila are 35 years old, the probability of them working napakataas.
According to Senator Joel Villanueva, who also chairs the Senate Labor Committee, over 6,000 illegal workers were apprehended by the Department of Labor and Employment last year. Meanwhile, for Senator Richard Gordon, the number of Chinese retirees in the country is alarming and may pose a threat to national security.
We have a problem with our neighbor, and 35 years old is soldier's age. That is dangerous as far as I'm concerned.
Meanwhile, a bill seeking to limit the participation of foreign contractors in the country has been filed in the Senate. Senator Lito Lapid filed Senate Bill number 1889, which aims to amend the contractor's license law and strengthen the regulatory powers of the Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board to protect the local construction industry. Under the bill, foreign firms may only be issued a special license for a specific single project in the country. Before securing a license, the foreign contractor must commit to several conditions. For instance, they must designate a Filipino resident agent, ensure transfer and skills training for local contractors, and must only undertake a foreign-funded project. The foreign contractor must only use locally sourced construction materials and components, except for those that are not available in the Philippines. Last week, senators urged the DPWH to prioritize the hiring of Filipino workers after it was found out that there are Chinese workers in some infrastructure projects in the country.
And for the news abroad, here's Kath de Maraos reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
Good evening, William. After 7 months of not accepting tourists from other countries, Thailand has finally opened its border to 39 tourists from Shanghai, China. The Chinese travelers arrived in Bangkok via a chartered flight yesterday, October 20, under the newly created special tourist visa, which lasts for 90 days. Another group of tourists is expected to arrive in Phuket on October 26. Mr. Pipat Ratchakitprakarn, Minister of Tourism and Sports, has said that there will be approximately 400 visitors in early November. Anyone who wishes to enter Thailand will be required to undergo a 14-day quarantine period in approved facilities and get tested twice for the virus before heading to their destinations. Australia's Security Intelligence Organization reports rise in potential terrorists motivated by COVID-19 and more foreign spies targeting Aussie politicians. Joining us tonight is one of our correspondents in Australia, Marvi Delfin, to give us the details live. Marvi?
The Australian Security Intelligence Organization, or ASIO, is certainly getting busier as the COVID-19 conspiracy theories are fueling the rise of right-wing extremists who account for up to 40% of the subjects being watched for potential terrorist activities. At a parliamentary hearing yesterday in Canberra, Director General of Security Mike Burgess said that the coronavirus pandemic had been used as a recruiting tool by Islamic-inspired terrorist organizations to prey on youth using the internet. Mr. Burgess also said the Senate estimates they see the pandemic as proof of the failure of globalization, multiculturalism, and democracy, and confirmation that societal collapse and a race war are inevitable. Australian Federal Police's Assistant Commissioner Ian McCartney firmly reiterated this posed threat, saying that young people were very aggressively being radicalized online. So far, 80 Australians who had traveled to Iraq and Syria to join Islamic State or other groups remained in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Australia's domestic spy agency continues to strongly advise about foreign intelligence services eyeing current and future Australian politicians. Let us hear from ASIO's Director General's statement.
Almost every sector of Australian society is a potential target of foreign interference, and the threat manifests itself in different but equally unacceptable ways. We see evidence of intelligence services deceptively cultivating politicians at all levels of government who will advance the interests of the foreign countries. In the coming weeks, I will write to all Commonwealth parliamentarians to warn they are attractive targets for those trying to steal our secrets and manipulate our decision-making.
ASIO also revealed that there were more foreign spies and proxies currently operating in Australia than at the peak of the Cold War. Kath?
Marvi, while foreign interference investigations are usually shrouded in secrecy, did ASIO Director General Burgess name any of the countries involved in this Senate report?
Kath, Director General of Security Mike Burgess did not particularly mention any of its suspect nations in its ongoing investigations, but it is worthy to note what Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton said earlier this year, that the nations included China, Iran, and Russia. Given the sensitivity of the issue and mounting tensions with China, the Legal Affairs Committee is making sure that ASIO has safeguards put in place to manage the reputation of the organization against any perceived partisanship. Kath?
All right, Marvy, thank you for that report live from Australia. U.S. President Donald Trump and his supporters continue their accusations of bias against social media giants Facebook and Twitter, as well as mainstream media. Sonny Cost from California, USA, tells us why.
In just a few days, the handling of social media platforms of a New York Post story about presidential candidate Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden has pushed long-simmering complaints from U.S. President Donald Trump supporters about social media bias to the top of Republicans' talking points. Trump supporters, who are also called MAGA from his campaign slogan "Make America Great Again," and rank-and-file Republicans are in unison in accusing tech giants Twitter and Facebook to having liberal agenda and are using whatever means necessary to censor conservatives and protect liberals. In their defense, Twitter and Facebook's attempts to limit sharing of the Post story cited companies' policies meant to throttle the distribution of hacked materials and fact-challenged articles. Already, Republicans in both Congress and Senate are saying they will vote on subpoenas forcing testimonies from CEOs of Twitter and Facebook about this matter. The president himself lashes out not only to social media giants, accusing them of bias when Twitter flagged his misleading tweet about COVID-19 among others, but also mainstream media, branding them as fake news in many occasions. The latest target of Trump today is CBS 60 Minutes and its correspondent Leslie Stahl, as Trump walked out early from a Tuesday interview and followed up with a tweet trying to shape a maskless Stahl, and then threatened to post his video of the interview ahead of CBS News Magazine's broadcast this Sunday, saying the network was unfair to him. Stahl joins a number of media representatives who have felt the president's wrath in just the past 3 weeks. The list includes Fox News anchor Chris Wallace, who moderated the first presidential debate and was accused by the president of tag-teaming with Joe Biden against him. Today's anchor Savannah Guthrie, who Trump called a Biden surrogate after her forceful questioning of the president during their town hall last week, and NBC White House correspondent Kristen Welker, who he accused of being terrible and unfair even before her hosting of the last presidential debate start this coming Thursday. In a follow-up tweet, Trump repeated his frequent complaints that Biden gets preferential treatment from news organizations. Sonny Cost, UNTV News and Rescue. USA. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
While the Australian federal government attempts to rebuild its economy due to COVID-19, its very own iconic Great Barrier Reef is threatened to extinction. Another correspondent in Australia, Maeve Yandog, will explain why live. Maeve?
Kath, Australia's Great Barrier Reef is facing a threat to extinction as the country's federal government pushes for a gas-led recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The federal government has recently pledged more than $50 million in its budget as a support for the gas industry and development of 5 new gas basins, which poses more damage to the Great Barrier Reef. In response to the gas-led recovery, the Morrison government is pursuing the Beetaloo Basin project by Origin Energy in Northern Territory. Reports in response to Freedom of Information requests showed that this project alone could produce an extra 39 to 117 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions in Australia. This represents an increase from 7 to 22% of Australia's emissions. Australian National University's Professor Will Stephen explained that burning fossil fuels like gas causes climate change. This is the primary driver of the Great Barrier Reef's bleaching events, and that the greenhouse gas emissions from the country's gas industry will only lead the reef further to its degradation and destruction. North Queensland MP and Special Envoy for the Great Barrier Reef, Warren Engst, also identified in his report earlier this year to the Minister for the Environment, Susan Ley, that climate change is the single greatest threat to the long-term health and future of the Great Barrier Reef. For this reason, Mr. Engst said that he supports the net zero emissions target by 2050, and he continues to advocate for its adoption as a federal government policy. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Maven Dog, for those updates on the Great Barrier Reef. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Thailand and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Kath Demaraos, reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
Scientists consider plastic bags more environment-friendly than paper and cotton for urban cities. Here's Jovic Bermas to tell us why.
A new analysis made by scientists from Singapore's Nanyang Technological University revealed that single-use plastic bags have a lower environmental footprint than single-use paper and multi-use cotton bags. Using a life cycle analysis, experts evaluated the environmental impacts of 5 types of shopping bags in relation to their production, distribution, transportation, waste collection, treatment, and end-of-life disposal. Reusable plastic bags made from polypropylene non-woven plastic were considered the most eco-friendly option, followed by single-use plastic bags made from high-density polyethylene plastic. Production of cotton and craft paper bags, as according to the team's model, significantly contribute to global warming and have ecotoxicity potential due to bigger environmental footprints. To produce these kinds of carrier bags, immense amounts of water and natural resources are consumed. Scientists also found that a single-use craft paper bag has over 80 times global warming potential than a reusable plastic bag. Published in the Scientific Journal of Cleaner Production in August, the research team emphasized that their model was applied specifically to Singapore. However, other densely populated metropolitan areas such as Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Dubai that have waste management systems similar with that of Singapore could also benefit from the NTU's model. Gregors Lisak, the research lead and assistant professor at NTU, said that reusable plastic bags are the best option, provided that they are reused over 50 times. Lisak adds that single-use plastic bags, if treated properly, are less detrimental to the environment than the other types of bags. Jovic Bermas, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, October 21, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.